Thank you so much again. Um, Yoni's here. Would you like to hear questions and comments now? And then I know you've prepared another surprise for us.
Yes.
Um,
Maybe I'll just say that if people would have come physically to the city, we probably would go into the custody for a little visit, but we wouldn't be able to enter those places that are very small with the drawers. And Father Stephane did make a special effort to bring us in, to present the medieval objects. In regards to the Stavrotex that they have plenty of, maybe that was a little bit of a disappointment, because when we came, Daniela, you and myself, he prepared the most beautiful Stavrotex, those that are really glorious. But when we came the second time, for a reason, they had to be stored away. And so we got the less interesting ones, or the less beautiful, but it was also very interesting to see the modern reliquaries, like the one with a drop of blood of John Paul II. And there are relics, and this is maybe for another conference to prepare, because it's pretty new, relics that are in people's homes. For example, when he spoke about popes being sanctified only recently, and then we have new relics, as he said. So when Pope Paul VI was here in January 1964, apparently a cup of coffee that was given to him, Arab coffee, was left with the black grains down in the bottom, and that is today considered to be a relic. And it is a relic in the possession of a family that hosted him. So it's really interesting to see that this material, this world, is still alive.
um, so, Yisca, would you like to present the special relic from Bethlehem before we delve into the discussion?
Yeah, I think I'll
Maybe
do.
we should do that. And then please remember your questions and comments regarding the film we just saw. And um, we will see just a short presentation of an extraordinary relic and an extraordinary story connected to it.
Okay, Daniela, can you see the slideshow?
Yes, yes, we
Okay.
do.
Okay, that's a very peculiar story, I would say, because or an opportunity to see relics being transported and being revered in our days, in our times. What you're looking at is a relic that arrived here only 2 years ago. It is the relic of the crib that St. Jerome, is witnessing in one of his letters. And clearly we know that it was the pride of the Church of Nativity to have also the crib of Jesus. In the Liber Pontificalis, it is mentioned 3 times. The clearest mentioning of it is when Pope Theodore I, who was from a Greek origin, from the Orient, received from Patriarch Sophronius a little bit of that crib. So we are told that it is there from the 6th century, 7th century, but some speculate that it may have arrived even earlier to Rome. It was housed in the Santa Maria Maggiore. I put here a picture with snow around, simply because if people know the story of Santa Maria Maggiore, it was ordered, it was built on a snowy day in August. Anyway, you see the apse right behind the obelisk. And if we are in the church, it is indeed in the apse. You have to go all the way to appreciate and see right below the mosaics that hint to Bethlehem and Jerusalem. So we know that there is a whole study of Rome becoming a new Jerusalem, a style of Jerusalem, especially in this area. So above you see the mosaic of Jesus, Mary, and the Magi arriving. But that's the point. In the apse, since the 6th century or the 5th century or the 7th century, there was the crypt with the reliquary showing the pieces from the crib. Now, as a matter of fact, what you see, the reliquary itself is from 19th century, after the one from the 16th century was stolen by Napoleon troops. But the point is that inside there were two wooden boards, 90 centimeters each, made of sycamore tree, and they were apparently just used as the legs or holders of a limestone or clay trough. But in recent years, they were very much worried because of the deterioration and the woodworms that attacked the remains. And therefore, they anyway wanted to take them and restore them. This was perhaps the opportunity to take that little piece that you see, to install it in a reliquary, and to send it to the Holy Land. This, when you look at the lower part of the reliquary, that was made again in 2019, it says in Latin that it is a gift from Pope Francis, and you can see the symbol of Pope Francis. This is the document that is in the archive, specifically saying it is a gift to the Holy Land, through the Franciscans, and that's what I want to show you. What happened in November 2019, just a little bit before COVID stopped everything. The first station of the relic was, after landing in Ben Gurion Airport, was in Notre Dame in Jerusalem. The Church of Notre Dame is associated, is linked with the Vatican, so it was the appropriate place to put it in the Church of Notre Dame. It is here that you see in the upper right side the Custos of the Holy Land, Francesco Paton, signing the document, saying that this indeed is received by the Holy Land. Next to him is the nuncio, the ambassador of the Vatican, and down left, you see that there's also the Cardinal of Santa Maria Maggiore. So he arrived with the relic, so that it is in November, end of November 2019, that there's a big mass celebrated in Jerusalem in the presence of the relic, after which the locals come and venerate the relic. It's a nice way to look at the way people venerate the relic, including the smartphones that are taking a picture of the relic. But this was just the first station, because on that very day in the evening, the relic was taken out, and crossing the streets of Jerusalem, the traffic lights, they arrive to the second destination, and that is Saint Saviour, the Franciscan custody's heart, the core of the Franciscan province here. So it was placed, as you see, in the church. There was another service done here, and it was then presented to all the bishops and then the Franciscan friars to be kissed, to be venerated. And then it comes to its third locality, and that is coming to Manger Square in Bethlehem. The children of Bethlehem were out standing in lines. The Franciscans from all over came, and indeed now came the second in command in the custody, Brother Dobromir, taking the relic. He's accompanied by dignitaries from the Italian diplomatic corps, and of course the Bethlehem municipality, heads of the municipality. And now you understand why it has come. It is in order to celebrate Christmas. So we are now exactly 40 days before. This is the first Sunday of Advent, when the Custos now brings it in, where to its real final destination, and that is the Church of St. Catherine. We in general relate to it as the Church of Nativity, but of course it is a section which is owned, possessed, and worshipped, or services are held in it by the Franciscans alone. So for a very, very brief moment, this relic was brought down to the place of the grotto, the holy grotto where the manger was and the crib used to be, but then it is brought, and the final or the biggest celebration was in December 25th, 2019, when the relic was put on the main altar of the Christmas celebration. But I think perhaps the most important and interesting aspect of this relic that returned home after 16, 15 centuries is the fact that the person who asked for the arrival of the relic was no less than Abu Mazen himself, the president of the Palestinian Authority. He was the one who asked from the Pope to bring the relic in order to celebrate not only the fact that 2020 years ago Jesus was born, but also the end of the incredibly expensive and laborious project of restoration of the Church of Nativity, something that took place for almost a decade. It was finished, and Abu Mazen was asking Pope Francis, who agreed, and this is how it came. So now, on a daily basis, when you come to St. Catherine's Church, you can worship the relic in the chapel that is where the baby Jesus statue is placed. This is the statue which is used during the Christmas celebrations, but now it is used together with this holy relic. And on Christmas Day alone, it is taken to the main altar of the church. So I thought that this was a nice way to end the story of this country being a place where relics are not only transported from here to the world, but the world to here. But in this way, it is a full circle. It went out, it came back, and it only brings a question which I discussed with you that perhaps a scholar of international relations should deal with, and that is the role of a Muslim political leader in asking a relic to make a statement about something. So this is all for you scholars to explore.
Yeah, this is another amazing story. Okay. Yisca, there were a lot of comments, appreciative comments in the chat. I don't know if you had the chance to, well, you should. But I think Nick and Ali had some questions. So Nick, would you like to go first?
Thanks. I thank you so much, by the way. Those were wonderful, and especially getting to see inside of the custody's collection is something really special. So thank you so much. I was curious, you mentioned that the first time you went, you'd seen this, they brought out these starotexts. I'm of course very curious now. What was the story with the starotexts? What period were you talking about?
I don't know if that they were that old. I guess a couple of centuries old, but not something that would date back to medieval times. I guess most of the stuff that they have there would be from 16th century and on. And he was just specially putting them out for Daniela and myself. He didn't realize that we actually wanted these very starotexts to be filmed in the film. So he made another display. I mean, he was extremely kind and a very, very knowledgeable person. He is the doctor, the expert of liturgy for the church, who does everything from the textual works to providing the vestments and the reliquaries for all of the services of the church. The point is that there is so much to be seen there that they have decided a courageous decision to make a museum. Now, a museum in the custody, I can't see that really working because it's going to be such an interference with the custody's work. The custody is like a little Vatican. They have so much work to do. They are in control of shrines in Jordan, in the Palestinian Authority, in Gaza Strip, in Cyprus, Lebanon, Syria. And still they really are ready to open up, like you've seen in this film. And I think perhaps he was very happy that an international conference of that level is sort of the first visitor. And you are very kind visitors. You didn't interrupt the work of that.
Can I follow up with a quick question, because it came up in your second video, and I confess that your observation about the forms of veneration of relics that include smartphones brought up a question for me, which is, in the various traditions that we are covering here in this conference that people are gathering, is there a sense of established norms with regard to photography and digital representation of relics and the veneration of digital images? And do they differ between traditions today?
I have absolutely no idea. I think Father Stephane would be able to answer that, because I think that they try to put limits. At least with, I don't know, discussions with friends of mine, nuns and sisters, they talk now about the attempt to put in the rule. Okay, there is no, in the Regula Magistri or in the Regula Benedictini, there's no rule about using or not using electrical elements, but now they are discussing it. But I don't know, I really don't know. It's very interesting. You could see the line when I was there looking at the veneration, first in Notre Dame, second in Saint Saviour, finally in Bethlehem. I don't think that I saw one person who was not taking a picture of the relic. And I don't know if afterwards they use the picture itself as kind of provider of another baraka. I don't know.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I saw Jackie a minute ago, but he disappeared. He may have had something to say about digital images. Ali?
Thank you so much, Daniela, Yoni, and Yisca. This seeing that up close was just, I don't know, I get really excited, as you can tell on my face, but it was wonderful. Thank you so much. I did have two questions, and one might be obvious to everyone else, but the certificates of authenticity, I'm assuming that those are Vatican-based research and so what does in your opinion, or what you understood, mean to this particular collection of what authenticity means? Does that just mean approved by the Vatican as being a relic, or is it historically sound, or does it need future research? That was question number one. And then question number two, the bells, obviously, I'm so happy that you brought them. Thank you so much. When he said they were buried and there was presence of oil on them, did you get an inclination of what, just because I'm assuming that bells in the medieval period were blessed and anointed and given names, so could the oil have preceded the burial, or why was he so determined to say that they were placed on the buried bells as a protective kind of element? And these are just sort of two questions that I had in mind. I have to run to a meeting in a little bit, but I'll thank you so much for indulging.
So I guess you can run immediately now, because I have no answers, because I'm not a scholar. I'm sorry. I mean, I'm a scholar for one or two issues, but not this, and I haven't researched it. To me also, it is something to be explored. Why do you need documents of authenticity? Each one will probably be studied in its own context. And I will tell you that if you were here physically, we would probably take you, Daniela and myself, to another amazing collection of the Orthodox Church. And the Orthodox Church doesn't need any authenticity documents. So also it sort of represents a mindset, but I guess each one should be studied on its own. And we did see that most of them in these drawers, you saw it was quite an incredible room with these drawers, with these thousands of envelopes. And we didn't open more than 20, but those 20 all had authentication documents.
Right, perfect.
With the bells also, I don't know, I'm sorry. But I know that there's Professor Shagrir is working with another group, and we can try to find out who's doing the work on the bells. But he did say something that would interest you. He did say that probably they were put down because, he mentioned it, because maybe they would be taken to become lamps in mosques.
Wow, wow, nice.
He said that.
Wow. Well, thank you very much. Again, this was absolutely fascinating. I really do appreciate the effort, and the film was great.
Daniela, you're on mute.
Yeah, sorry. Anyone else would like to ask or comment?
I would love to know what people here, the scholars, would have liked to research if they were given, I don't know what.
Access?
Access, time, resources to study. What are the questions that we need to ask for the future?
This is a good question. Anyone would like to, please, Yamit.
Thank you, Yisca. It was amazing. I'm very excited, and I actually the stuff that you've shown at the beginning with the snake feature, and I was wondering to what extent the snake perhaps just an associations connected to Moses staff, which became a snake. Perhaps this is something the pastor, while holding, has a special meaning. I don't know. I think it could be like a really interesting object to observe. I actually have questions concerning indulgences and relics, and I was wondering if indulgences were also connected with specific relics of the Holy Land, beside what we know about specific sites that provided devotees with indulgences. This is perhaps also, and the relics of Saint Francis, it brings again the question concerning his presence, allegedly presence. Perhaps he arrived or did not to the Holy Land, or I know there is a huge debate around it. So these are the questions that I'm interested in. I was wondering if you know when this museum is about to be open for the public.
Yeah,
and again, thank you so much. Toda rabah.
It's a huge effort on their part, and they're very, very serious about it. They've shown us the plans. It's going to be phenomenal. If you've seen the other museums that they've already set up, they are quite incredible, very, very impressive. So I think because of COVID, so many things were delayed, but I believe that in a year or two, it's going to be open and in the custody itself. But I wanted just to take this opportunity to say to Anne Lester that also I so much appreciated your lecture, because I look at Stavrotek all the time when I go around here, and whether you knew that the Stavrotek that is used on the day of the exaltation of the cross in the church, the most precious one, you saw it just for a little bit, was used in order to heal Jerusalem from COVID. If you saw that picture.
No. I didn't know that. And I apologize, my internet was going in and out, so I missed that part. I will go back and watch.
I sent a photograph to Daniela to send it to you.
Thank you.
Because it was a special service that was done. The Latin Patriarch of Jerusalem was driven up to a point on Mount of Olives where you can look at the view of the city. He raised the cross to 4 corners of the world, but facing Jerusalem, he asked the Holy Cross to cure the city from corona.
That's fascinating. I would be really interested to see what the full liturgy, if it's written somewhere, entailed. I'm thinking of other colleagues who work on, similar blessing of the city at that moment. Thank you.
Would you do the same with regarding war and interdenominational strife?
No, I don't think so. I don't know. Actually, there's something
even trickier, isn't it?
How many times did they take this for the function of whatever conflict problem is present? I believe it was quite normal. I think it was done with Holy Host, like in Corpus Christi processions. But this was particularly striking because we are now healed from COVID, so it worked.
Go ahead, Anne.
Thank you. Okay. I just wanted to say to Yamit's question, I'm sure there are others who would chime in too, but about the serpent on that crozier, in Limoges arts, that's very, very common on the Crozier, as you probably know. So, and it's common on Limoges, like clasps that close the boxes. And I think probably because it has myriad different symbols of the devil is what I've always thought of, right? So therefore conquering the devil, but I'm sure there are other interpretations. I did have a question, and I just know absolutely nothing about this, but in thinking about the Custos Museum opening, I'm wondering about, I mean, now is obviously not the moment to pursue this, but about putting objects, interfaith objects on display or in conversation with one another. That is to say, thinking about the basins, for example. At first, I thought that he was going to maybe show us basins that had, from afar, that didn't have Christian imagery necessarily, but that were produced within Islamic atelier and then taken into the collection or something like that. How possible is it in our contemporary moment to do that within all the objects, right, that are available in smaller collections I know about, for example, in Syria, or have gone and visited? Yeah, so I just kind of throw that out there as a question. I'm sure others know. I just have no idea.
I don't know if you were asking, let me just repeat this. If you're asking if in our contemporary situation, they would be showing pieces that have a connection, come from other religions, cultures, okay? Is that?
Yeah, more really the possibility of bringing things from one collection to be shown or in part of a collection that would move within the Levant today in our own moment, or that objects that could go to Europe, for example, that would be on display. I mean, I know, William, you've put on exhibitions. I've never done this, and I have no idea if it's possible to put the material in conversation.
Yes, I'll just tell you that I'm sure that Father Stephane, Dr. Stephane would love to answer that. Actually, he's on his way to Milan, and otherwise he would join us. But I can tell you that the spirit of the custody is very much what you are now talking about. First of all, for them, they feel at home in Syria, just as they feel at home here. For them, it's no foreign land. This is the custody of the Holy Land. So it's trivial for them to bring things from Syria, to see it as part and parcel of the history, shared history. And because they've been here so many centuries, and so many of them speak Arabic and feel at home with Muslim surroundings. So I think there's so much for this. If you are in touch with Father Stephane, if you will be in the future, I think you can suggest to him and you will hear him very positively answering, yes, I would love to do that.
Thank you. That's fascinating. And thank you again, Yisca. This was really so wonderful. Your voice in it was also wonderful too.
Yeah, please.
Can I say something to follow also from Anne's comments, and then joining her in thanking you, Yisca, shows all these treasures. It was really quite a thing. I think what is interesting also, and hopefully it'll be in the museum, is to follow up on the movement that Father Stephane was describing, of this in and out movement in the objects themselves. And this is something that I'm interested in, I think many here, is the transformation of objects. So how objects change as they move locations, move religions, move between functions. And I think it'll be very interesting to see that very carefully in the objects themselves, how that movement he was describing as they move in and out of the Holy Land, in and out of services, is manifested in the objects themselves in minor modifications. Sometimes it's very difficult to look at that and to understand that, like the teeth mark that William was showing yesterday on the ampulla. So these kind of things I think are really interesting, but it takes a lot of analysis to appreciate that. More comments and questions.
Right. Yamit asks if there are also manuscripts, and there's a big collection, right, Yisca? That's for another tour.
There are multiple things that would draw you to the custody, not only the documents that they have, Also book covers that are very interesting, printed books. So yes, that's a treasure. And I'll tell you that in general, the Franciscans perhaps suffered less than some of the Orthodox libraries, because whatever they had, they usually put in an archive or a library. I'm sure they had also their problems, but what happened with what we know from the Orthodox monasteries is that anytime a researcher came, I mean, just think of St. Catherine and the and the Codex Sinaiticus. I mean, people just looted stuff. So the Orthodox, they do have also a good collection, but it is not as well preserved as the Franciscans. I don't think that the Franciscans have such ancient material, except what we've seen now, as the Orthodox, but what they have is very nicely in catalogs, and it's easy to find. Yeah, so surely their archive and their map collection, their books, they have a lot to present.
Can I ask you a question about the Yisca? But you engaged him in a really thoughtful way about when you asked him about where the material was coming from, when you were asking, for instance, about the vestments, whether it was also coming from Africa and Asia and things like that. I was wondering about what your impression is of what that means to them in the custody to have material from other places. And I was thinking also about the relics, because I presume that in all those drawers are relics of not only of saints that have no connection whatsoever with the Holy Land, but also have no connection whatsoever with the Franciscans. So and then the fact that those relics have come there, one is tempted to say it's sort of redundant to send relics of Saint Radegund to Jerusalem, right? Why would you do that? The holiness of Saint Radegund, brings holiness to some place that maybe needs it a little bit more than all of the sacred material in Jerusalem. But to them, I wondered whether, especially from his answer to your question, is it kind of represents a wholeness of the community in the place more than it functions as individual relics of individual saints. It kind of represents a single body of material that is the kind of global reach.
Wow, that's exactly it. And when Daniela and myself were spending a lot of time with him, we could see how excited he was, how moved he was by this a comparison that he made. Jerusalem is a heart, and the blood goes to the world, but if the blood doesn't return to the heart, then you're dead. So Jerusalem is a place that gives life and absorbs it or embraces it back and sends it again. So his sense of the Catholic Church being what it's supposed to be, from the word point of view, Catholic, it's the whole world captured in here. So surely there are saints that to locals would mean nothing, but for them as Franciscans, think about it, even when he said that there's a vestment from China. So for a Franciscan, China is also part and parcel of the big Franciscan mission to the world and the big Catholic mission. For them, I don't think that they would have interest in Orthodox saints. I don't know if Makarios from Cyprus or Panayotis, the new martyr, they would not be in their collection. They don't have that sense, I think, of universalism, I think. But in regards to all others, he also said that other communities want to feel part of Jerusalem. And so if they send a relic from somewhere, then they become a part of that big heart and the movement of the blood that he spoke about. So it was very, very theological and very emotional and very beautiful, but I think also very sociological of the church as the Catholic Church.
If there are no other comments for the moment, can I take you back a minute to the Islamic relics? or rather sacred places that are tied to relics. And regarding the authentication of the body or the place, which you mentioned earlier, I think it was striking that the Catholics need documentation and the Orthodox don't. So I'd like just to bring up two differing views from the Islamic world. One, that of the Sufi mentioned earlier by Lawrence today, El-Nabulsi. You mentioned him, right? Yeah, the 17th century Sufi from Damascus who went, I think, 3 times on tours to sacred places. And he was a very learned man, right? He was a scholar and also a mystic. And he goes from one tomb to another of tombs considered to be of prophets, of saints of sorts, of friends of the prophet, you know, all the gallery of saintly figures in the Islamic tradition. And he once and again expresses his skepticism regarding the authenticity of the identification of the place, or whether the local tradition is authentic, but he really doesn't care. I mean, he still, he would say, well, this doesn't make a lot of sense. Encountering a place called after Hussein, the grandson of the martyr grandson of the prophet in a village near Hama in northern Syria. He says, this really doesn't make sense. But nevertheless, he reads the Fatiha. He does the usual rituals of veneration, and because it doesn't really matter if it is the right place, since it becomes sacred through the rituals people perform at the place. So if the people venerate it, if people pray there, then it's sacred enough for him, and he joins the prayer. And also it seems that in this, I think I read this interpretation in Grihan's beautiful book about the Twilight of the Saints, about saint veneration in Ottoman Palestine, that also Abdelghani al-Nabulsi venerates those places in respect of the people, of the local people. It's their tradition, and he doesn't argue with them. He just joins in and prays and says the Fatiha. And in a very different view is voiced by perhaps a better known Muslim. It's Ibn Taymiyyah, the late 13th, early 14th scholar who's today identified with all the fundamentalistic, radical, militant movements of Islam. He was a very sophisticated thinker, very much against saint worship, relic worship. He thought all this was extremely un-Islamic, you know, when he has a whole range of justifications for his view, which I won't go into. But regarding authenticity, he claims that there's only one authentic tomb of a prophet in the whole world, and that is in Medina. We can know for sure only regarding Muhammad's tomb. All the others, even he's skeptical regarding Abraham's tomb in Hebron, even though there's a very ancient tradition, he admits, but we can't be quite sure that it is Abraham who is interred there. But Ibn Taymiyyah again doesn't care if we know who is there in the tomb, whose relics they are. It doesn't matter to him, because there is no reason in the world to pray besides tombs, to visit tombs and to ask the intercession of the saints when praying to God. For him, one may pray by a cross. He says that explicitly, than by a tomb, and it makes no difference if the tomb is the place of rest of a prophet or an anonymous person. Lawrence, you want to add or argue with me?
No, I think you've summarized this wonderfully. Thank you. No, I have a question. As we have been talking about Islamic and Latin Christian and Orthodox Christian rituals here. So is there anybody here who could inform us about Jewish ritual in this respect? I mean, relics and tombs of prophets and saints. And I mean, when we talk about authenticity, what do we know about Jewish attitudes in the medieval Near East?
Kana, are you here? Would you be willing to represent Judaism for us?
I have to think about it. Right now, I don't remember any sites or it's very actually in modern Israel. There are more and more holy sites, and this is a very interesting phenomena. Right now, I cannot answer you. Sorry.
No, but it's the tomb worship is medieval and perhaps even earlier.
Can I extend my question? And does anybody know about Jewish worship of footprints? Maybe not now. If anybody comes across this, I would be interested.
Actually, there are literatures written by pilgrims who came to the land of Israel during the medieval time, and one of them reports a footprint of an angel in the Galilee. And he claims that this is a site of the grave of Yoshua bin Nun. So, and then we have Meron, the grave of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. So the one who wrote about it is Elchanan Reiner, Professor Elchanan Reiner, but he wrote very important articles in Hebrew, and he never actually translated them. So it's very interesting phenomenon, and this actually I spoke about it yesterday in a class which I teach about the Byzantine time in the land of Israel. So I can summarize it to you in English and send a short report.
Daniela, may I just
Greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Follow up on that? Elchanan Reiner was immediately my first thought because he explores the fact that the Galilee becomes a map of Judaization of the space. But I will just say this for the sake of the modern things that I'm dealing with, and that is that in Capernaum, near Capernaum, a matter of 200 meters from the famous Capernaum, only during this COVID year, all of a sudden, an ancient Roman sarcophagi was now made to a little building for Rabbi Tanchuma. Now, Capernaum, Kfar Nahum, in the 14th century is already mentioned by this Judaization map of the Galilee as associated with Rabbi Tanchuma. But it takes the year 2021, during a COVID year, that a site from Roman times near Capernaum is now a legitimate, formal site, burial site of Rabbi Tanchuma.
This is actually terrible.
I agree.
Peter, would you like to add anything?
Yes, thank you. First of all, I had to teach today and to drive today, but every bit of pieces was very interesting, and thank you very much for yesterday and for today. But let's think about it. That's the idea of Hebron, of the patriarch graves, and this is one of the oldest sites of this kind, with built like in the masonry, like the Temple Mount. It's built in Herodic times, and it's a collected grave, not only one person, but more persons, maybe even for the parents of Herod and so on. So there is the theme of holy graves is going on here from more than 2,000 years, and it has Jewish sources. And again, if we take the grave of Rachel on the way to Bethlehem, there's a medieval sources reminding it, and so on and so on. So I think there's a dialogue, and these maps from early Middle Ages, from High Middle Ages, that are giving us a Jewish space by putting graves, holy graves, on the map. Again, the idea that this is Jewish, and there are people mentioning it in early modern times in their pilgrim accounts to the Holy Land as Jews, that they have to go through these stations. And so the ways of liturgy may have changed from Middle Ages to the early modern 16th, 17th century, when the Kabbalists of the Sepharad made up their own personal liturgies and collective liturgies around the graves, around the burial sites of the rabbinic saints. And this is something, this is so strange, that the rabbis that declared graves as impure places became places of holiness and reverence during a time that they became the founding fathers of Jewish thought, even more than the Bible in the 17th century. So I think it's a complex story, and again, it will be a very interesting subject for a conference. What are we doing with our dead? How do we revere to them, and how do we this is an intercultural and interreligious matter, and I think we have a lot of forms now here in Israel imported from the different diasporas, Jewish diasporas, in all kinds of religious languages, and they are meters or standing side by side at these places all around. Okay.
Thank you very much, Dr. Leonard. Okay, last comment, Nick, please.
I just wanted to bring this up because this interestingly sort of ties in with various things. I think the question initially was about authenticity and tombs within Judaism, and I was just struck by the fact that the time that I visited you all at Ben Gurion, you took me and you took us to Yavne, where we visited the site, which is the tomb of Abu Huraira, also aka the tomb of Rabban Gamaliel, and while we were there, someone said to me, and by the way, what the tomb really is probably a Crusader era mausoleum underneath all of that. And in fact, when the very first correspondence we had about this conference, Daniela, I thought, I know what I'll do. I'm going to really look into that Crusader era mausoleum in Yavne in front of me. And turns out it's bits of different tombs that were put together, including some Crusader stuff, but also from different periods. So there's not much to look at. But this was a question for me, is that when we visited the tomb, there was certainly a lot of activity there in terms of veneration of the tomb of Rabbi Gamaliel. But is there, I mean, would it be considered offensive to state the multiple valences of that object to those pilgrims, that this is also the tomb of Ibn Huraira? Abu Huraira.
Eyal, do you want to take this challenge?
Yeah, I'll reply in a slightly related story that Yoram Bilu was an anthropologist who studied the creation of pilgrims sites in modern Israel. So he was working on some sites that were created from scratch, in some of them literally in apartment blocks, which became major shrines. And he published a very important book that looked at quite critically. But he told us once that when visiting the shrine after publishing his book, he saw a copy of his book next to the shrine, because the keeper of the shrine used that as a means of authenticating the shrine even further, his anthropological research of that same shrine, even though the research itself was slightly critical of that. So I think things can go in parallel ways sometimes.
Yes, and I heard the story that this book became a prescription how to make new shrines. What he analyzed became the receptor for making new shrines.
Yes, he definitely described some very successful initiatives of new rituals. Okay, I believe we could go on, but we are it's already beyond the time we designated for this session. Yisca, thank you so much again. Quite a few people mentioned this as the highlight of the workshop so far, and I tend to agree. Thank you all for being with us. And I want to remind you that we will have another tour tomorrow of a different type. We will visit, we will again be the first visitors of an exhibition, an exhibition that will open, that opens actually this week, but will welcome visitors from next week, as far as I know. On campus of the Hebrew University, not on our campus. And this exhibition will present modern interpretations of medieval objects done by contemporary Israeli artists. And I expect it to be also very interesting. So see you tomorrow for another session of lectures, another virtual tour, and finally for what I hope will be a fruitful final discussion with conclusions and maybe ideas for further work together. Good evening or good day. Hey, Sarah, are you still there?